You think he's not guilty, huh? I don't know. It's possible. Well, here it is not possible. That guy is not guilty, and here we are at Not Your Father's Movies. I am Vito.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jesse.
And here we are with our special guest, Tony Letney. Tony, how are you tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so we are here to talk about 12 Angry Men, 1957. You guys all ready?
I think so.
Yeah,
I'm kind of angry.
So ready for this.
Oh, I think Letney's ready. Letney, you ready?
Oh, I'm angry.
All right. Well, so to cap us off, to begin us, this is our first in a new series. It's a Not Your Grandfather's trilogy. We are beginning with 12 Angry Men from 1957, directed by Sidney Lumet. The teleplay and later on the actual stage play and everything that's sort of been written about this was originally written by someone named Reginald Rose. Just to highlight a couple of the cast, because we do have a fairly large cast, about 12. But we got juror number 2, played by John Fiedler. We have juror number 3, played by Lee J. Cobb. Juror number 8, our protagonist, played by Henry Fonda. And juror number 10, played by Ed Begley. So this is a legendary film, and a part of our new trilogy, talking about not our grandfather's films, is talking about these. We're going to pick 3 classic courtroom dramas. And the earliest one, the one that I think starts this whole genre off, is 12 Angry Men. It's spawned countless ripoffs, remakes, quasi-remakes. It's become foundational when we talk about courtroom dramas. And especially as these are viewed as morality plays, it's essential. You can't escape it. Even when it comes down to just movies, 12 Angry Men is up there in the pantheon of, The Godfather, of Apocalypse Now. It's the greatest films ever made. So it's kind of a weighty subject. I hope we're all ready to talk about it. I know that I'm going to definitely not give it enough credit as I go forward.
Yeah. It's almost impossible to give it enough credit. It's an incredible film.
Yeah. What did you guys think upon watching it?
All right. So watching this movie again, it holds up really well. Like, there's a lot of older movies that I've watched throughout the years where when I watch them again, there's a lot that hasn't aged well, whereas almost everything in this movie has still maintained its masterpiece vision. What do you think, Lenny?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's a number of things, minor things that definitely date it and frame it in that time. But the overall themes,
smoking indoors,
all the handkerchiefs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's timeless themes. And I love to argue, and this is a movie all about arguing in one room. So it's my ideal movie.
Yeah, actually, sort of how all of us sort of came together to know each other is in countless loud, sometimes pointless arguments about movies like these.
Sometimes
I say
pointless?
sometimes because to say otherwise would hurt my feelings.
Sometimes pointed, I'd say that. Every once in a while, there was a reason why we were arguing.
We cared about it a little bit more, yeah. But so this is like a perfect movie. This is arguing the movie. And it's also arguing about the most important thing that we could argue about. It's about social justice. It's about capital punishment. It's about weighing the balance of a man's life versus what it is that he's done. So to sort of start us all off, as we usually do, we're going to go to Jesse. But I think Jesse's got a couple of tricks up his sleeve for this corner.
Yeah, so I'm going to go over the plot, but I can't really go over the plot because it is just one giant argument. So basically the setup is there's this kid on trial, and there's a mountain of evidence stacked against him. And what happens in this movie is everybody thinks he's guilty, and then they're all slowly convinced he's not guilty. So I'm going to go over just the mountain of evidence against him, and then who all 12 jurors are. So the mountain of evidence starts out with, first off, the murder weapon. The murder weapon is a unique switchblade, which is identified in the courtroom as the weapon that was used to stab the victim. And it was seen that the kid, the defendant, bought that weapon on that day, and it was identified in the courtroom as the weapon that he bought by a shop owner and his friends. Furthermore, the kid is supposedly really good with a knife, so that makes sense. Second, the kid has motive. apparently his father beat him throughout the years, and he just snapped this time, came back and killed his father. 3, the kid has no alibi. He says he was at a movie and doesn't remember who was in the movie or what the movie was. 4, there is a woman witness who wakes up and she sees the killing across her bedroom through the windows of a moving train. 5, at that same time, an old man who lives below the murder, he says he hears someone say, "I'm going to kill you." Split second later, body hits the floor. And then he walks out to his door and he sees somebody fleeing the scene. And both the woman and the old man identify the murderer as the son. All right. So there's a few plot holes that are found with all 5 of these theories. First off, for the murder weapon, they find that it's not really a unique knife. You can find it in any shop because one of the jurors actually buys it.
Chilling scene. Really, really, really good scene. I love that when it's like classic, almost Hitchcockian, right?
Yeah.
When he takes the knife out and stabs it right into the table next to the other knife. Click.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after he just spent all this time setting up how rare it was, and it was like, oh yeah, it was a switchblade knife. You can't buy that anywhere. The shopkeeper said he never sells it. He's like, 2 blocks away, I bought this. Oh, continue.
Oh, and then what's also perfect is later on in the movie when someone pulls out that knife and it's just like, he killed the man with this knife, and they're like, that's not the knife, that's the knife that he pulled out of his pocket earlier.
Yeah,
so great. The second hole that they point out is in his motive. Just because the father hits him a lot that would mean that if the father hits him for, the millionth time in the kid's life, why on earth would that trigger him to go and kill him when he's already been hit so many times?
Everyone has a breaking point.
Everybody apparently has a breaking point, yeah. Third, no alibi. Just because the kid can't remember where he was doesn't really mean that that's damning to him, because lots of people can't remember the exact movies that they saw or who starred in them when they've seen, especially after they've experienced such a traumatic event as seeing their father dead.
I mean, speak for yourself.
Yeah, you remember every movie that you've ever seen and the day that you saw it, too.
Probably, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a superpower. I expect you all to have that. Are you telling me you don't?
I'm not saying I don't, but I'm also not saying I do.
Well, that's not helpful for right now.
Reasonable doubt, man. Reasonable doubt is what I'm saying.
It's possible.
I have IMDb. That's all I have.
My memory is the Internet Movie Database.
Third, for no alibi. Yeah, so no alibi. That's how they solved that. For fourth, the woman witness. The jurors remember that she has indents on her face, which means that she wears glasses. And she was not wearing glasses during the trial. And she probably wasn't wearing glasses when she was sleeping that night and woke up and looked out her window. And 5, there's the old man. The old man's testimony is called into question because of the woman's testimony. He says the train zipped by. So how could the old man have heard that argument going on when the train zipped by? Because the train is really loud. And also, the man has a little limp. And he says he got to his door in 15 seconds. And when the jurors try the same setup in their courtroom, or not courtroom, but little like deliberation room, it takes 45 seconds. 41. So that throws... Okay, fine.
Gotta be precise, man. Gotta be precise.
They were precise.
True. It's true. They were very precise. Actually, I think it might have been 44.
No, I don't think so. I think it was 40.
I'm going to go with 42.
I think it was 40.
My secretary is telling me right now it was 1 minute, 46 seconds.
Wow.
We were
That's
off,
a really
guys.
long time.
I think your secretary might need to find a new job.
Was he lying on the floor and pulling himself along by his fingernails?
At that, I would believe it. Just the way they were describing it, he sounded like he was about to die at any moment.
Dude, the guy just had a stroke. Yeah, he just wanted
to be important.
Yeah.
Come on.
He just wanted to be important.
His name was Robert Paulton.
So that's all the evidence, and now the 12 jurors the 12 characters who are in this movie are, number 1, the foreman who tries to lead everybody and constantly fails. There's juror number 2, He's the ambitious kid who also voices Piglet in the Winnie the Pooh series.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing!
Many times. It's incredible. John is
that's so
the
true.
legendary actor John Fiedler, most well known for just being Piglet.
Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't know that.
I love him. Like, I so many times watching, just brief tangent. I'm sorry. Sidebar. I was watching this movie, and so many times my wife pokes her head around the corner, is like, "Is that Piglet?" I go, "It's Piglet." And a few minutes later, he's like, "You can't talk to me like that." And she goes, "Is that Piglet?" I'm like, "It's Piglet." It's so funny seeing this middle-aged man with these spectacles and this demeanor say these things and talk about like justice and he made a good point. He made a good point. How could he have known? And it's all I could get in my head is just like little Piglet, just deer.
And he's so perfect for that role because honestly, he's just playing Piglet in this movie. This is just a little guy who wants to fit in with all the big players and has no idea how, but is trying to make a stand for something. So he's basically, whenever I think of this juror, I think of the Piglet guy. And there's juror number 3. Yeah. He's the really angry dad, the antagonist for the rest of the movie, basically. There's juror number 4. He's the ultra logical juror. Juror number 5. He is the guy that grew up in the slums, and he sort of represents minority figures, it seems like. There's juror number 6. Juror number 6 is the working man. Juror number 7 is the salesman who has the baseball cards in his pocket. Juror number 8 is Henry Fonda. He's the star of the show, the guy that casts doubt on everything. Juror number 9 is the old man. Juror number 10 is the racist old man. Juror number 11 is the immigrant. And juror number 12 is the advertiser, basically the guy that's bored with everything that's going on and is constantly playing games and goofing off. And that's about a summary of the movie, I think.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job. This is a hard movie to summarize because you literally kind of have to go beat by beat, scene by scene, interaction by interaction. And, the most boring way to do that is if we were all to just do it ourselves. Although it might be fun for us.
We'd have a blast, but...
I call not being the racist juror.
I call the angry dad.
Oh, you want to be angry dad?
I want to be the angry dad.
I think you'd be a good angry dad.
I think I'd be a really good angry dad. I'm not really an angry dad, just for all the listeners.
Yeah,
I'm a pretty happy person.
You're generally a happy person.
I think.
I mean, I've seen you be an angry dad, but I think it's normal.
Don't ask my kids. They can't talk.
Also, don't talk to his kids, you weirdos. But going over to Tony here, our guest, if you would like to judge, sit in adjudication over Jesse's sort of summation, what would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10?
Seems like a good summary.
No, I know. I did not ask for a qualitative opinion. I wanted a 1 to 10 opinion.
How about a 12?
12 out of 10. I like people who also go over the set limits.
So sort of moving forward, we usually, after a summation, we try and move into nostalgia. I think this one will be a little bit faster than what we usually do because I'll just start us out. I came to this as an actual kind of like a play in high school before I saw it as a movie. I had the book by Reginald Rose. I had the beautiful like Penguin Classics edition, and I was studying it for some sort of drama class in high school. And I remember breaking it down and going sort of beat by beat through it, and just really gaining an appreciation for how drama works and how to write multiple characters with different points of view. It's just a really wonderfully written piece of work that never neglects a character. It's never boring. It's always compelling. You always want to know what someone else is going to say. And the right person always speaks when they need to. I don't think enough has been said, at least recently, about how well staged this movie is. So I don't have a ton of nostalgia except for it being kind of I don't know, what's a good word for it? Like a Rosetta Stone, kind of like a founding text, like a Dead Sea Scroll for me of this is what I'm going to base a lot of stuff off of. This is
cool.
What I believe is great writing. And in my life, I will compare everything to something like this, especially like a chamber piece, something this claustrophobic and this, I I don't know, intensely staged. As for the movie itself, I mean, Sidney Lumet is flexing his muscles here. It's his first major theatrical release. He later went on to have one of the most illustrious careers of anyone that I can think of. And this really is, it's not really a young man's movie. It's a timeless man's movie. This is an astonishing achievement if you're 25, and this is an astonishing achievement if you're 65. It doesn't matter how old you are when you make this. This is the biggest calling card you could ever throw at Hollywood. I made 12 Angry Men. Yeah, so that's really where I come to it from. Not a lot of emotion for me, just a lot of admiration and a lot of hero worship for Reginald Rose and for Sidney Lumet, and also for Henry Fonda. You know, doing his shtick here better than he's ever done it, I would say. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I came to this. I think I have a little bit more nostalgia around it because I came to it. I think I must have been 10 or 11, probably. And I was over at my friend's house. I had a couple of good family friends, and their father kind of stood in for my father in a lot of ways when I was growing up, and he was a lawyer. And so he loved this movie a lot, and he could not wait to show it to his kids. And I was fortunate enough to be kind of included in the moment when he showed it to them. And I remember sitting down, 10 or 11 or 12 or something like that, and being like, okay, what is this? 12 Angry Men. I have no idea what I'm in for. I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. And it blew my mind. It was so cool to see. And he just loved it. He loved watching the jurors just interact. I mean, everyone does, right? It's so cool to see them, see the interplay. And he brought just the love of the legal system, the love of the judiciary system, the right to a fair trial and being judged by your peers. That's so important and such a massive part of being an American. One of the things that we take for granted a lot of the time. But that scene where the immigrant talks about how incredible it is something that he pointed out to us after the movie and said, hey, when you get older, you're going to get called for jury duty. And I want you to remember this scene. And I do every time. I'm like, oh man, 12 Angry Men. I think of it every time, and I'm excited. I want to get on a jury. I never have been.
Same.
I think it probably won't be that intense.
Briefly. Sidebar. Now, out of the four of us, who has actually served on a jury? I'm going to go first and say no. Mike?
No, almost twice.
Jesse?
Yeah, same as Mike. No, almost twice.
Letney or Tony?
I'm not sure I've ever been summoned. Maybe once, but I've never served.
I think you would know if you've been summoned.
I mean, I have a vague memory of maybe like while I was in school and I had the school excuse, but I don't remember definitively. So I'm guessing I haven't been summoned.
Probably not. Or maybe, I don't know. I have been summoned. I've been summoned once. My wife's been summoned once. I got out of it at the time. I couldn't afford to take the time off to do it. I wish I could do it.
Yeah. I've been summoned like every year since I turned 18. I've gone like 12 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, seriously.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, maybe 7, but
that's still an insane
crazy.
Number.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
You should ask somebody on the governmental level to take it easy on you for a little bit.
No, I really want to be on a jury.
I really don't want
I'm
to
never going to get on a jury. I'm never going to. I'm one of the few people who's like, I am so in for this.
You're going to be so eager and be like, I would please
let me do this. But,
Jesse, what do you feel? How did you come to this? What's your nostalgia of rating? What's your factor here?
So I first watched this movie with my dad and brothers, and I think I was in elementary school. I was super into it. I loved the movie. It was my first real encounter with a mob mentality where everybody thinks one thing. And then realizing that just because the majority of people believe it does not necessarily make it true. And that idea was utterly fascinating to me, both then and now, and has basically stayed with me the rest of my life. That just because everybody believes something doesn't mean there's not something to be said on the other side of things. And even if nobody else is saying it, maybe you need to be the Henry Fonda and take the stand and be the guy who considers other ideas and be humble enough to do that. So that's basically where I'm at. It's been super impactful for me in my life, but I don't think I worship it the same way you did, Vito, because you're throwing like a crown on this thing. It's kind of impressive.
I think it's one of the greatest American teleplays. I guess that's how it's classified on Wikipedia. It is just one of the single greatest pieces of drama I've ever seen written. But Letney, where did you come at this from? Was this your first time, your second time? Do you have a history with this?
So growing up, my family watched a lot of old movies. In fact, I probably watched more movies growing up from the 50s than from the 90s. But for some reason, this one never came up. And there's a lot of, like Roman Holiday and I guess a lot more romantic classics. So we never watched this one growing up. In grad school, we had a lot of, especially near the end of our semesters, we'd have a big project. And a couple of us who were procrastinators would end up spending like 3 or 4 days in a row, like pulling all-nighters 3 or 4 days in a row and just completely sleep deprived to get our projects done. So to stay awake and stay focused, because a lot of the work is a little bit mindless. It's a lot of mechanical stuff without requiring a lot of thought process.
Sure.
So you'd have a movie playing in the background to keep you awake. And so that's the first time I watched this. And so there was a lot of movies that are good for that, like like Glengarry Glen Ross, like dialogue heavy movies.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just like every time a great scene is on, you can sort of like turn to the TV and just zone in for a second and then leave. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say is that, there's a lot of movies that you can just kind of watch and kind of half pay attention to, but this movie has so many striking, emotional moments that just pull you in. I really didn't do a lot of work for the hour and a half that I was watching this. It was probably nice. 2 or 3 in the morning in the basement of our architecture building.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that was the first time I watched it about 3 years ago, but I've seen it probably half a dozen times since. I definitely agree with Vito. Wow. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I just can't believe that this sort of thing just exists out there, and it's so well written, and everyone can please just like effuse praise about it, because this is something I don't think that can be really overpraised. Everything down from Sidney Lumet's like claustrophobic direction, to the pitch perfect casting, to the wonderful dialogue, to the incredible like set dressing and costuming. The gradual stains of sweat that appear underneath everyone's arms and on their necks and like beads up on their upper lip. It's so visceral. It's so intense.
Did you notice Henry Fonda has a white suit and Lee J. Cobbs, Lee J. Cobbs, he's got a black suit.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool. It was like a
white hat,
black hat.
Yeah.
It was very much, and I know Henry Fonda did a lot of cowboy type stuff.
He did. And what's actually kind of funny, just like a quick digression, is that I guess maybe like Henry Fonda's 2 of his most famous Westerns, right? He's got, I believe he's got 3:10 to Yuma, and then he's got Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah.
And Once Upon a Time in the West is he plays one of the most iconic, memorable villains of all time. And he plays him like a good guy, which is really bizarre.
It's so, I love that movie. I love him in that movie.
Yeah. What's his name? Is it Frank? Is it Frank?
I think it is.
I think it's Frank.
Yeah.
Someone will correct us if we're wrong.
But he's got a black hat.
He does. Yeah. He's really, really damn evil.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so we got down where everyone's come from on this, and Jesse, I think that you had something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a sidebar, and this time I don't want the sidebar to end. It's going to go the rest of the podcast if we can, and it's a what if scenario. And the what if scenario I have is, what if you found out 12 Angry Men, the second remake that I know of, is going to come out next year? Who are going to play all jurors? So as we go through scenes and we go through the different jurors that we're talking about, we can like throw in some substitutions that we think would be good. And I think a good place to start might be the main juror number 8.
I
think his name is actually Davis. He's the only one of 2 that are named.
Yes.
So I had a couple picks for him. But I think my favorite, more I thought about it, would be Matt Damon.
Interesting.
And the reason why I would say that is because juror number 8 is supposed to be like the everyday man, right? Somebody who you can be like, who is not just only slightly better than you are. He's slightly better just because he acts better, not because he has the movie star qualities. And I think Matt Damon can dress himself down to look like that. And also somebody who is very humble. And there's very few actors, the more I thought about it, who can pull off the humbleness, who can pull off Henry Fonda saying, "I will vote guilty if everybody else in this room does." The more I thought of like a lot of actors trying to pull that off, the more I found it like not believable. But Matt Damon he's super articulate. When he says something, you want to listen to it and you believe it. And he's also a guy that can persuade, just like juror number 8 does in this one. What do you guys think about that?
Lenny, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I was approaching it on similar lines. I mean, I think the character is definitely defined by that kind of calm, quiet presence, being a leader without being overtly a leader. So yeah, that kind of calm influence. So I had similar picks. I think my number one pick for him was Mark Ruffalo.
Interesting.
That's really interesting.
Really cool.
Okay.
He's
Another
on
one
my
I liked
list,
was
but not juror number 8.
Okay. Yeah, another one that I thought had similar energy. Maybe not the authority, but I thought maybe Jake Gyllenhaal.
I could see it.
I don't think he's old enough. I was thinking about him too, and he's so. I think that Henry Fonda at the time
was in his 40s, late 40s.
I think he was in his 50s because he was born in 1905, I believe. And
oh, okay, yeah, no, definitely in his 50s.
So he's almost 60.
Wow. Oh wow!
Or
he looks incredible.
He's 65. Yeah, he looks younger than that. But so that was something I kept running up against. Yeah.
I think if you're going to do Jake Gyllenhaal,
but I mean that's you can say who you want.
I mean, if you're going to do Jake Gyllenhaal, I would say that you'd have to sort of you'd have to scale the rest of the cast down too, because otherwise then you sort of like, at least in my mind, you sort of run into a different sort of thing than what's going on in the original play, which is you run into like an old young kind of thing, which is totally cool and would be really interesting. Another added layer. I think that both of those picks, though, if I were to go for one of them, I would go 100% for Mark Ruffalo. He has that quiet dignity and that charisma to carry that along. That's a wonderful pick, dude.
Yeah, he was definitely number one, and he's definitely got that age thing. You can have the gray stubble and just that quiet presence.
Yeah.
No, okay, I'll change it. Yeah, Mark Ruffalo. I'm down for that.
Who did you have again? Remind me, Jesse. I'm sorry.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon fits more in the age range, I think. But I think, and this is it's going to shock you when I give you like my answer for this because it's a lot different. But I think that I'm not going to abandon my choice. I think I have a great choice, but I think that Mark Ruffalo fits this Henry Fonda energy a lot better than Matt Damon does. And I'm not saying Matt Damon wouldn't be good. I think he'd be obviously incredibly magnetic. But there's just something about Mark Ruffalo, that easy charm that Matt Damon, while he does possess charm, it's not of the everyman. Like he's not Matt Damon from Good Will Hunting anymore.
Yeah, he's kind of a weirdo. He's a little weird. He's a little funky.
Yes,
like that's he's decided to go that way, which is kind of cool. I like that he decided to do that.
I think those are two actually surprisingly radically different takes. What do you got, Mike? Add it to the pot.
Okay, I'm going to add these to the pot. I'm not even 100% sold on them. I think Matt Damon or Mark Ruffalo would be better. But I mean, thinking about Henry Fonda, where he is in his career, he's right in the middle smack dab middle of an incredible career in Hollywood. He is a big name star. And so the two names that come to mind are George Clooney and Brad Pitt.
Interesting.
In terms of just star power, in terms of just presence on screen, and in terms of their ability to hold the screen, but also their ability to really act. and not take away from other people. I think that they've both done enough where they're not, the center point, that they could pull it off. A third pick.
Oh, okay.
I do have a third pick, which is a little bit out of left field.
I see all of us are like,
yeah, I know.
Jump on it.
I know. And there's a lot to jump on. And the third pick would be Idris Elba. I think Idris Elba would do a really interesting job. It brings in an entirely new dynamic.
He's so intense.
But he's got some intensity, but like in The Wire, he shows up in The Wire,
Stringer
right?
Bell.
Yeah, Stringer Bell in The Wire. He has sort of this pleasant quality to him, but this intensity underlying, very intense underlying, that I think that he could corral and bring a really interesting sort of presence to the role.
I think you could pass a bowl of oatmeal to Idris Elba and he'd make it interesting.
Oh my gosh. I love Idris Elba.
But I do want to talk about, and I want to kick it over to you guys too, but I do want to say, I think that I would go, this is foreshadowing my pick a little bit. Maybe you guys can guess it for now, but I think that George Clooney and Brad Pitt are simply too charming.
That could be true.
I think it actually shares it shares some DNA with the Matt Damon pick. Like it's just, they're almost too likable. And so of course we're not coming at this with the mindset the audience had in 1957 of knowing Henry Fonda and understanding where he comes from and who he is in the cultural consciousness. So we can't know. But looking at it now, and I see him when he makes the moves he does, they are surprising. It's not that I don't expect him to be the good guy, but any one of these people could be the good guy. And that's how I'm coming at this from. And there's definitely a generational age gap here. Hey, not your grandfather's movies. What Brad Pitt or George Clooney could bring to this sort of role, I think it's too nice. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think Brad Pitt and George Clooney are... the thing about Henry Fonda is that Henry Fonda doesn't steal the screen. Like that's, I was looking for a lot more humility in the actor, somebody who can also fade to the background at any given moment. And anytime I thought of like George Clooney or Brad Pitt or even like Leonardo DiCaprio, all great actors, anytime I thought of them in this scene or in this movie, they're unable to blend in with everybody else. They're unable to become like the same as everybody else at the table. So I think Matt Damon does a better job of that, which is why I picked him. But yeah, I think Brad Pitt and George Clooney are too iconic almost to have sitting in that seat.
I think that's fair. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so I think I really like the Idris Elba pick just because I love Idris Elba. I do think he's probably too intense for this role. And I think Jesse's right about George Clooney just being too charismatic and having too big of a presence. I think there's a way that I guess I'm thinking of Killing Them Softly for Brad Pitt, and I wonder if that him in that role where he's more subdued and just less emotional, kind of more flat. Maybe he has the range to accomplish this role.
I guess I was kind of thinking of him in like Ad Astra, where he kind of doesn't really have any emotion at all.
Yeah, to the detriment of the movie.
Yeah, like we're not talking about that movie. I don't really want to. Although I guess that is kind of a dad movie.
It's definitely a dad movie. It's definitely only about dads. It's also a movie I also don't want to talk about.
But he does do a really good job of not having any emotion and not being like, I'm the, I don't know.
No,
the screen stealer. He does. It's all just his face.
He has the emotion of a chalkboard being pressure washed. Like there's nothing going on. So
I love it.
You can be completely blank, and you're right. But also, I don't think that's what's needed here. I think
like somewhere between there and Burn After Reading, I think you could do it.
Somewhere between Ad Astra and Burn After Reading, there lies a Brad Pitt.
Right there, like that's his range, right? That's like good. Nothing and everything. Yeah. He's got the range. Right. He is that good of an actor. So that's I know he is one of the most iconic actors to have ever lived. So is Henry Fonda.
That's true.
So was Henry Fonda. I guess that's where I'm coming from with it.
I think you're right. I think so. I didn't
Yeah,
mean to leave it for the
I want to
final
hear.
act.
I want to hear vetoes.
So I am going to break a little bit of rules here to just sort of move this endless sidebar here, Jesse. I'm going to give you. I did not cast all 12 jurors, as I know everyone else did.
What about the rural juror?
I did not cast one rural juror. But what I wanted to lead with is for juror number 8. I think it's Denzel.
Oh, that's a good one.
I think it's Denzel. I don't know. I don't know of a single actor that could be anyone but the Henry Fonda of this generation, and even eclipses him. I think in terms of legacy, in terms of body of work, in terms of ability.
He's done everything.
He's done everything,
and he's got so much gravitas.
He's probably our greatest working actor. I say that because Daniel Day-Lewis is apparently not working anymore.
Yeah, that's who I would have said in another
world. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think you're onto something.
But here, no. This pick is it. So first of all, like Mike started out with Idris Elba, but this is a race swap. I think the play doesn't demand it, but it's very open to it. So that is very dependent upon who he is facing, and that's why I want to break the rules a little bit, because we have the 2 jurors that are sort of intensely aligned against him. Now, I'm not counting the super logical juror. He's not against juror number 8. He is just he just wants to make sure he's making a logical decision, right? He's not an antagonist. Mm-hmm. But as far as I can see, I think it's juror number 3 and juror number 10. Is juror number 10 the really racist one?
I think so.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so juror number 3 is Lee J. Cobb, and juror number 10 is Ed Begley. They are the principal antagonists, I think, to juror number 8. Okay, so Denzel is here; he's my lock. I think that no one could pull this off like he could. But for juror number 3, I have Kurt Russell.
Huh.
I think that he's old enough. I think he's big enough. I think that he's angry enough. He's belligerent enough that he could pull this through. I mean, you'd only have to look at the Hateful Eight to see how he is in his later career. And then for juror number 10, I have Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin?
I have Josh Brolin. I don't think he needs to be old.
Josh Brolin, he's got so much physicality though. And yes. Like juror number 10 has, I mean, he's big, but he's voluptuous. Like he's fat.
Yeah.
Man.
But we're already gender swapping. Oh, sorry, not gender swapping.
We haven't done
our guy.
I want to say for Denzel, I think that's a good pick, but I still think he's got too big of a look at me star quality to him that I think Mark Ruffalo would honestly be my new pick now, just thinking about it. I just think he fits this whole juror number 8 style a little better. But Denzel would be a second pick for me, I think. But also going to Josh Brolin, I think I see why you have him there, especially it's really easy to think of him as a villain now. But I think my number 1 pick for this character would be John Goodman, because he's so big and verbose and just able to talk, and it sounds like he's shouting, which is where I think John Goodman would come in as a good fit. What do you guys think?
Sorry. I think Denzel is a good pick. I think he does have that quality. The problem is that whenever I think of Denzel, I think of Training Day, which just doesn't fit at all. But I agree with John Goodman. He was on my list for Ed Begley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess my problem with Josh Brolin is he just seems too virile, and to play this kind of it almost seems like the character of Ed Begley is someone who the world has passed by, who hasn't caught up. You know,
someone who's literally sniffling the whole time.
Yeah, just this kind of pathetic character, and I don't know if Josh Brolin has that pathetic. You know,
then I would propose switch them, switch Kurt Russell and Josh Brolin.
I can see that more. I can definitely see it more. I thought about Josh Brolin. I don't think he works in this movie. I don't think he fits.
Why not?
I think because his virility is, he's just very virile. Like he walks on screen and you're like, oh man, that's Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
Like he's such a man. I want to be that guy. And the thing that I think is unique about this movie,
playing Thanos. Like,
well, yeah, but I mean a million things. But
like most famously Thanos.
I suppose that is what he's
in the highest grossing film of all time.
That's true. That's true. But I mean, I guess the thing about this movie, the thing about this film, that one of the many things that I love about this film is that all of the characters. And one of the things I think is hard about like picking famous actors to replace everyone is that there are really only 2 or 3 famous actors in it, and everyone else, they're in a million movies, but they're character actors. They're there, they have a couple of scenes, then they're gone. They're all people that you're like, I'm this person. They're not necessarily people that you look up to. The only person you look up to is Henry Fonda, and only, as you said, only slightly. You look up to him slightly because you're like, oh man, I really hope when the time comes, I have the courage to be that guy. So you look up to him only because he's there and he's done it. And he gives you something to say like, hey, I could be him. I could be on my best day. Everyone else, he's convincing to also be there on their best day. And so that's part of why I think Josh Brolin doesn't quite fit any of the characters, because he's so far above what he just has a presence that's far above like me on my best day. Maybe that's a personal thing.
I feel like you may be overestimating Josh Brolin's influence, considering you just tried to cast George Clooney as juror number 8. Like,
no, I mean, I don't know, his physicality, like his I don't know.
What were you gonna say, Jesse?
No, I think I'm mostly with Mike there. Like, all right, for my picks for number 3, I had a couple that I thought of. And again, I tried to go for people that I normally think of as villains, because I think only that really works for number 3 personally. So for number 3, my second choice is Bryan Cranston, who could do the slow buildup of at first That's you great. Think he might be reasonable, and then he comes in and he's pretty angry and belligerent and unreasonable.
Why do you guys not think that Josh Brolin could do that? No, I mean, I'm sorry. That's a really wonderful pick, and that's why I want to stack my pick next to it. It's like, that's really cool. That's really good. But what is it that Bryan Cranston can do that Josh Brolin can't do? Or why couldn't you believe that he's a good enough actor to sell that role?
Okay, wait. I don't think it's about the actors. Okay, so it's a little bit about the actors, but more about the characters that they're trying to play. And this character that they're trying to play, it's... Juror number 3 is that old guy that you see on the street, and you don't want to be that guy. But when you first talk to him, you think he might be kind of reasonable, but ends up being like very angry and something you totally don't want to be. And the thing that with Josh Brolin coming in, he seems like somebody I immediately kind of identify with. And again, maybe he has the depth to not be that. But I think it's better. I know he does. But I think it's better for this particular character that somebody comes in that you just don't want to be anything like.
Maybe.
Yeah, I guess I disagree with you, Jesse, that Lee Cobb is a villain. I mean, he's definitely the antagonist, but I don't think that, like, my picks weren't framing him in terms of villainous actors. It seems like, I mean, he's a complicated character, but it seems like for most of the movie, he's definitely fighting hard for one side. But, you know, he repeatedly says that he doesn't have a bone to pick. And even before his final rant, where he eventually kind of reveals what his true intention or true motives are, he kind of talks about, he logically goes through the argument, and his argument makes some sense. So to me, it seems like the character is not so much as a villain who's trying to, put this kid in an electric chair. It's more that he's this logical person who is almost completely ruled by his anger, and by these demons of his past with his son. So I guess I went in a slightly different direction, because I was looking for people who give a great rant. And and kind of capture that anger. So I was thinking either like Russell Crowe or maybe Al Pacino or like Ray Liotta.
Dude, I didn't even tap the well of the Pacino.
Yeah, I think those are all great choices.
Look.
Yeah. I guess I was thinking of Al Pacino in Glengarry Glen Ross, where he's like, "Where did you learn your trade?"
Ooh, Pacino would be great. Yeah, he'd be good.
I think I was going for when I was doing my thing is that I think that Russell Crowe is so intimidating. He's such a big man. You know, like, I mean, we're talking about Josh Brolin being virile and all that. I personally do see the appeal, I guess, but when I think about like a guy that is just so wholly and totally both toxically and not masculine, I'm thinking about Russell Crowe because the guy is packing on the weight, but he is as angry as he's ever been. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys saw the recent Instagram ads for his new movie Unhinged, which is surprisingly one of the movies that's reopening cinemas.
Yeah.
But it's really rage-filled and incredibly obscene and very, very nasty.
Yeah, I was like, I can't believe that Russell Crowe was like, yeah, I'm going to make this movie. This is going to be good for my image.
Yes, because he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
He's now reached the point where he doesn't care.
Yeah.
And I think it's a matter of time before we get to Josh Brolin doing that. But when I said that about like maybe switch him, I do mean that I am down for an older white or I don't know, in Al Pacino's case, slightly tinged man that is mad and is mad about a lot of things and is mad about his life and is mad about society. And I'm down with that energy. I think that between the two of them, I don't know if I could pick a favorite one because Russell Crowe can do stuff that Al Pacino can't, and Al Pacino can dial it up to 11 like no one else can too. I'm torn. What's your favorite? If you had to like flip a coin, what's your favorite?
I think Russell Crowe was my first pick, but I do really like Josh Brolin.
Okay, Jesse.
I do have one more pick who I consider, and this would be a very different movie if he was juror number 3, which is Willem Dafoe playing a kind of almost crazy, like he comes in, you think he's pretty reasonable, and then he just turns on a dime, goes super angry. And just being able to do that throughout the rest of the movie.
I have to say real quick, this is not a role that Willem Dafoe is a stranger to. Lee J. Cobb plays this man, speaking as the father. He plays this role as a man gradually sort of unspooling. He's incredibly good at that. I don't think there's a turn on a dime in the character in the play or in the movie. It's a very gradual reveal, and Willem Dafoe is one of the most accomplished actors that we have, and I think that he would handle that role with beautiful aplomb. I don't think that he's like he would not play this role as the crazy guy that we see in Spider-Man or anything. Previous episode, listen in. But he would play it with a great deal of humanity because he's a very humanitarian kind of actor in his approach. I don't think he'd play it cartoonishly. I think that would actually be, out of the 3 actors that we named, I think that he would play it the most downplayed. He'd pitch it the lowest out of everyone.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a little different take than what I was thinking. But yeah, I think he would do that as well. Like, I think Willem Dafoe could actually take it multiple different ways.
That's fair.
So on that note, what do you guys think about J.K. Simmons?
Oh yeah, I kept wanting to put him in, but I don't think Whiplash is what this movie needs.
I think that no one can be the standout. That's the thing about this cast, is that if you like for what I did, for instance, when I cast Denzel, I was looking to sort of push the dramatic structure, but to push it in that way, to cast someone so charismatic, you have to cast equally charismatic people around him. And that way the whole movie sort of works together. You either cast working men actors in working men roles, or you cast movie stars in movie star roles. This structure does not admit of 2 movie stars and a bunch of character actors.
But that's what they did.
No, they have like one movie star, and then a bunch of people that you do know. But the movie star is not
Lee J.
even.
Cobb had a story career. I mean, he had a huge career. Yeah.
He does have a huge career, but here he's playing a bad guy. Not a bad guy, but an antagonist.
Yeah.
That does get his moments, his lines, his monologues. But there's nothing in this movie that's so showy and so dramatic. It's explosive. It's incredibly dramatic, but it's not individually specific. Everyone gets their moment to chime in and say something.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So if you're going to cast Denzel in a role, you can't just cast Denzel.
You got to cast other people.
You do. It has to be built from the ground up that way.
Okay. Can I drop my two, juror number 10 and juror number 3?
Go for it.
Because I haven't put them out there and they're pretty different.
So number 3 is super logical and number 10 is...
2 and 10. The racist and the angry dad. No, 3 is the angry dad. 4 is the super logical guy, isn't he?
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have 2 picks.
Guys.
I think they could go either way. And they're very different.
Okay.
But I think that they would do what you're saying well. It's Paul Giamatti and it's Bob Odenkirk.
Yes!
Bob Odenkirk as a racist or as an angry dad. Paul Giamatti as a racist or an angry dad. They both work.
Bob Odenkirk.
They're incredible actors in a specific, one-on-one situation. They're very line-driven. I mean, I think that both of them pull this off with aplomb.
So Bob...
And they're both very famous and also not too famous.
Bob Odenkirk, racist. That's what I want.
I don't know.
Yes.
No,
that would be perfect. That would be perfect.
Bob Odenkirk, though, being the guy who beats his son and then gets beaten up by his son?
No. Nope. No.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I see him as the racist
okay,
so clearly.
I'm fine with
and I see Paul Giamatti being the overweight, middle-aged man whose life is passing him by and who is disappointed but still consoles himself every night saying, like, I made him a man.
Yeah.
I see that a lot more. I think those are 2 wonderful choices, and I don't think that they are reversible.
Okay. I think they are reversible. I think that either of them has the chops to pull it off on either side. And I think them coupled with Denzel or with Mark Ruffalo, it would be incredible. It would be so amazing to see that.
What do you guys think?
That's funny because my pick for the racist guy was Paul Giamatti.
I think you do a great job at it, man.
I just think him saying like, "Look at these animals" would be perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at these animals, and the way that he has it, like he's balding and he's kind of big around the middle, and he's got the beard and everything. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Man, what a legendary cast. Why is this being made right now? We're doing Death on the Nile, and we're not doing 12 Angry Men.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So my second pick. So first off, I think Paul Giamatti for the racist guy would be perfect. But if you wanted to make an entirely different movie, Danny DeVito would make a great racist guy.
Oh no, I am not interested in seeing that. What a bastardization!
I'm pretty sure we've seen that movie.
Yeah, it's Always Sunny.
It's Always Sunny. That's the show.
There's like 300 hours of content on that, Jesse, if you want it.
It's true. It's already there. So I thought it'd be really funny to have him. I did want to run one more by you guys, and then maybe we could sort of drop the whole who plays who thing, or keep going with it, whatever you guys want. But for the old man, who's juror number 9, I was really struggling with this guy. Because the guy that I wanted for it, he's dead. This is the role that John Hurt is supposed to play. This is John Hurt, and he is R.I.P. gone. Who fills the role, Jesse? Who are you thinking? Because John Hurt's not here. So I thought of one person, and when I thought of it, I couldn't get out of my head, and that would be Meryl Streep.
Oh.
To totally change it. I mean, it's a gender swap, so that really changes it.
But you're saying like it, just in my mind with my picks, like it's Denzel, it's Russell Crowe, it's Meryl Streep in the remake of 12 Angry Men.
I was so okay. I got to read you guys this list because I looked up actors that are over 70, and you know what? You want to know what I found? I found on that list like Al Pacino, Harrison Ford, Robert De Niro. Yeah, but just tons of people. And Meryl Streep, she's just such a well versed actor that when I was thinking of anybody who could play this type of person, Meryl Streep could pull it off.
Yes.
And the person who, I mean, like, oh gosh, that role is so poignant too. I mean, what he says when he is kind of revealing what happens with the old man who, you know, he had the stroke, and he says he knows that it's his son. He says he just wants, like, he's an old man. He's got no one who will listen to him. No one's listening to him. No one's asking him for advice. And all he wants is for someone to ask him what he thinks. He wants to be quoted. They say, oh, how would you know that about him? And he doesn't even say, like, because it's me. He just, like, looks. And it's just like, oh, man, it's so powerful. It's this really poignant moment.
And actually, that leads me to maybe thinking that I might even say somebody like someone without so much charisma. Like, not in a bad way, but somebody like maybe Annette Bening might do that a little bit better. Someone that is more used to taking the quiet role, to underplaying something. I mean, Meryl Streep is just such a dynamo.
Yeah,
and anytime I see that she's in a movie, like I'm like, yeah, here's my money. I'd like to see it. But someone like Annette Bening or gosh,
I put down Christopher Plummer.
I
don't know if he quite fits. I don't know if he's got the right voice. I don't know if he does still retain some of his charm, despite the fact that he looks like a frail old man now.
But I mean, look, watching him in Beginners, you know, he's so good in Beginners, and he's so good at pulling off that youthful energy.
Yeah, but he also, I think, I mean, he's always been an understated actor.
Yeah, I like the idea of the gender switch, but I couldn't think of one. So my pick for this, there's a problem with accents and maybe a problem with too much star power too. But I was thinking Michael Caine, just like he could pull off the frailty and also the emotion.
Well, here for maybe for brevity's sake, because I mean we're already up at an hour and we haven't even discussed this movie's themes and topics. Let's start with Tony. Tony, you want to just read your list, start to finish, and then we'll go Tony, Jesse, Mike, and then me, because I did not do everybody. Does that sound good to everyone?
Sure. So I didn't have everyone. So I didn't have number one, the foreman. But for the Piglet character, I had Michael Cera seemed to be the obvious choice.
Yes!
And then I was also thinking maybe Edward Norton or Joseph Gordon-Levitt. But those two don't fit as well.
Very strong.
For Cobb, I had, I guess we already talked about that, Russell Crowe, Al Pacino, Ray Liotta. For the super logical guy, E.G. Marshall, I had Kevin Spacey. It's kind of the obvious pick. And then I was also thinking maybe Anthony Hopkins, or
you should probably pick Anthony Hopkins and not Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. But my other pick was Giancarlo Esposito.
Oh, dude, yeah, he's my number one.
That's
like
good.
He would just be so great at that cold calculating.
That's great. Yeah,
and the glasses too. Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't have anyone for number 5, Jack Klugman, or number 6, Edward Binns. For the baseball, number 7, I was thinking Jack Black. He's the guy who's not really taking it seriously and is kind of a goofball.
That's a good call.
Yeah, I see that.
Then for Henry Fonda, I had Mark Ruffalo or Jake Gyllenhaal.
Right.
For number 9, Joseph Sweeney, I had Michael Caine. Maybe also Morgan Freeman, but I wasn't sure about that.
Sure.
For number 10, I had Paul Giamatti for the racist guy. For number 11, for the immigrant character, I had Christoph Waltz, because I love his accent.
It is very good.
And then for number 12, for the ad man, I think John Hamm was kind of the obvious one, but then my other option was Vince Vaughn. For like kind of a charismatic young guy.
I like Vince Vaughn 100% more. 100% more. That's really good.
Yeah, that's good.
Sorry, just honorable mentions. There's 3 other actors I wanted to fit in there, but I couldn't find a place for them. And they were Steve Buscemi, John Malkovich, and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing if you don't have those 3 guys? Unfortunately, R.I.P. Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
All right, Jesse, what do you got?
All right, so we got Martin Freeman as the foreman. Again, Michael Cera as juror number 2, because who else could play that guy? Maybe Tom Holland is a close second. Willem Dafoe or Bryan Cranston as juror number 3. Giancarlo Esposito or Benedict Cumberbatch for the ultra-logical juror.
Beautiful.
Winston Duke as juror number 5. He could play off a good, like, the same character he played in Us, because he could do a bunch of like dad jokes, kind of ease the tensions, but also take things very seriously. For number 6, Andy Serkis, because he looks an awful lot like that actor in 12 Angry Men. For number 7, I have Seth Rogen, and this is the guy who has the baseball cards, right? So Seth Rogen, or as kind of a different take, Steve Buscemi, as kind of like the just leave me alone. I'm going to vote for whoever to say guilty or not guilty just so I can get out of here. Number 8, I said Matt Damon. Number 9, Meryl Streep. Number 10, John Goodman. Number 11, Oscar Isaac. And number 12, I've got Paul Rudd.
Very good.
I see that.
Very nice. What do you got, Mike?
All right, I'll rattle mine off. Juror number 1, Donnie Wahlberg. I thought he'd be great. Juror number 2, I also had Michael Cera or Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I like Joseph Gordon-Levitt a lot.
Yeah, I think he does it really well. He's got the glasses. He's kind of nerdy these days. Juror 3 is I had Bob Odenkirk for juror number 3, the angry dad. Juror 4, I wasn't sure, but I thought Javier Bardem would do a really good job as juror number 4.
Logical guy.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm thinking of him in No Country for Old Men, of course.
Yeah.
But he brings an intensity too. Juror number 6, Casey Affleck, and then I realized that I was kind of thinking that this was maybe in Boston rather than New York, but you know, whatever. Juror number 7, I put down Sam Rockwell. I thought he could pull off the kind of nihilistic sales guy. How did we
not say Sam Rockwell at any point? Jeez.
Well, we just did. Juror number 8, George Clooney or Brad Pitt, but I'm switching it to Denzel.
Thank you.
Juror number 9, Christopher Plummer. Juror 10, Paul Giamatti. Juror number 11, Mahershala Ali.
Oh, Mahershala. Yeah.
Mahershala. Yeah. And then juror number 12, actually, for the ad man, I had Mark Ruffalo.
Very good.
Yeah. And did I say juror 5? The juror number 5, Donald Glover, I had there. I don't know if I said that.
Very cool.
I thought that was a good kind of mix.
I'm gonna have to say, I like Mike's. I think Mike's picks fall in line most with mine. I like those.
I think they'd all be incredible films.
Yeah, these would all be like really cool.
You could do so many things. I mean, the thing is, I started thinking about it like, oh man, but you know, okay, back in 1957, it was an all-male like jury or an all-female jury, right? Depending on it. But now you've got a totally different world, right?
Yeah.
You've got men and women. You've got so many things you could do with it. So many different combinations of actors and actresses that you could do. It's almost impossible to whittle down, like, who do you want your 12 angry people to be?
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I think that we've spent a good amount of time on this, and maybe when we come back, we will discuss kind of what's going on in the movie before we say goodbye. All right, so we're back from our break, and what we really want to dive in now, because we spent far too much time on our fantasy draft castings.
It was so much fun, though. Guys, I had so much fun doing that and coming up with that list.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed myself a lot, and I enjoyed seeing other people's picks and just seeing how we could revitalize this essential and kind of eternal piece of American drama for our times now. I wish we could actually talk about that more for even another hour, but we'll just do that on our own time. We won't bore you. Digging into the movie a little bit more, actually going beneath the surface. So this is actually, I think, a very prescient movie for our times. While it is a little bit restricted by its time period when it comes out, it's a very incisive piece of drama about class, about race, about economic inequality. I think that still has a lot to say today. In fact, a lot of times the only thing I would fault this movie for is that it pulls its punches. What we need is this kind of hard-hitting drama where it pitches 12 strangers against each other, arguing about the fate of another person. Because this is really like, this is what a lot of our American judicial system is founded on. This is the sacred, almost God-given American right to have a right to a trial by your peers, and then have those peers really fight over you and decide, did you do it? Did you not? What sort of punishment?
Yeah.
And now especially that sort of jury system is such a bizarre idea, I guess, especially in the age of, post Black Lives Matter, post all the statues that we see toppling down, post George Floyd, post Breonna Taylor. It's really difficult almost to try and find a way into this movie because of how fraught our conversation has become about class and race. So this movie does depict several members of the jury as being of working class and several members being of a certain ethnicity. It's not really clear what kind. It seems generally Italian, which at the time was a minority group that was very largely discriminated against. But now sort of thinking about it in these different sort of terms, we would imagine that person on trial being a person of color. Somebody Latino or somebody Black. And the jurors of his peers, the jury of his peers would be made up of, a mix of people, a very diverse mix if the defense is doing its job. And it's kind of difficult to even know where to begin when talking about it. I guess the best way to start is to say, juror number 8, the good juror, quote unquote, the speaking man for the people, the idealistic person that we want to be. If we're assuming that this is a defendant of color, this person that's accused of murder, do you think that he is going to be judged by a jury of his peers, of people of similar color as himself?
I think that, I think juries today would probably include people of color. I think that they'd be, I think that's one of the cool things that the movie brings out is that we were getting a cross section of America, or at least of New York there. We've got someone who basically comes from the defendant's neighborhood, right? And he knows this kid. He's seen basically this kid, not necessarily this exact kid, but he says, he's seen knife fights on his stoop.
He grew up with trash in the yard.
Yeah, and I think the idea is that he still lives there.
He says so.
Yeah, we've got an actual immigrant. I think, what we have today is probably someone of Muslim descent or something taking that role. We've got a Wall Street trader. We've got a sales guy. We've got, it's almost like jury duty is the great equalizer in America in some ways, in some funny, odd ways, which I think is what is so powerful about this movie, is because you take all these people who normally would never interact with one another and put them in a room.
You make them talk.
You say, you guys all have to agree. You don't just have to talk. You have to come to an agreement. And if you don't, you failed. You failed your fellow citizen and yourself, because that could be you someday. And none of them want to do that. They keep saying, let's be a hung jury. And most of them don't want to do that ever. Even the people who are going for it, they don't really want it to be a hung jury. So, I think, yes, you're going to have people of color in it. If it's a story that's playing out today, I think you're definitely going to have women in it. And it's going to be a definitely interesting cross section. The lawyers on both sides are going to be working to make sure that they're both going to be trying to stack the jury for their defendants, either for the defendant's acquittal or for his prosecution.
Yeah.
But I think because of that, because they both come at it with the opposite agenda, that actually helps to ensure that you get more of a real cross section. I don't know. Do you disagree with that? Do you think that's not the case?
No, I agree fully. And I kind of wanted to ask Tony here. Tony, you're in the Bay Area. you're seeing a lot of different culture than what we're seeing, me and Mike down here in Southern California, or Jesse out in Arizona. It's just a much different culture there. How do you see this? What's your view on this playing out in your area now?
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco is a real melting pot. I mean, obviously, you have less of a African American population just because we're up in the Northwest. But yeah, so there's a heavy Asian population, Filipino, Hispanic.
Do you see this sort of story being different, given that, as you say, like sort of melting pot kind of situation? Do you see this playing out in a different way? Is there? Do you sense I don't know, different relationships between different minorities than what this movie seems to be portraying? I mean, this is like, it's portraying it in New York, right? The story is set in New York, and you have what seems to be a German man who is the very skeptical, logical one. It seems that you have a very working class, maybe Irish man who's the real pusher, who's the dad, of the boy when he breaks down. You're seeing maybe like a Russian, Polish immigrant person. You're seeing sort of generic white guys elsewhere around. I imagine that demographic would have to be a little bit different. Who do you think would be on this in terms of racial minorities, or do you think it would be different?
I mean, I'm not sure. But I guess one of the things that I found interesting about the movie is that, I mean, there's kind of the in-your-face racism, particularly of Ed Begley and a few other characters to a lesser extent. But what I thought was interesting, too, was that there's a lot of other biases that seem to be at play that aren't based on race. So there was a number of characters who had the assumption that the defendant, or the public defender, was kind of justified. So when there was gaps in the argument, or certain evidence that wasn't cross-examined to the extent that Henry Fonda wanted it to be, their response would be that, well, it seemed like, basically what I'm trying to say is that it seemed like there was a kind of a trust in the legal system that's maybe unfounded.
Yeah.
So it seems like, and it seems like there was a lot of biases about both the poverty of the defendant and the age of the defendant. So I guess I would argue that a lot of the biases in the movies might carry through, even if you take race out of it.
That's interesting. There is a lot of biases. They always refer to him as a kid. They're constantly talking about him as kid. They're constantly talking about him as like this violent blah blah. And they're always referring to his economic status as well. Jesse, do you have any thoughts about that?
I think juror number, I think he's number 9. He's the old man, right? His whole character is based off there being more ageism rather than racism in the room. In fact, I think juror number 3, the angry juror, makes a couple points a few times, saying something like, back in my day, I called my father sir. Who calls their father sir nowadays? And then it's super ironic that he's the guy that starts insulting the old man later in the movie. So, with that sort of ageism, though, I'm not sure if I would find that on a modern jury as nearly as much. Like, if there was an old man, I think everybody would just be just as inclined to listen to him, because, like, I think I was saying this earlier, like, older people just aren't, they don't walk around with a limp. You can hear their voices better. They carry better. They're healthier to some degree. I don't know what it is. So, I don't think that aspect of the jury would be there nowadays. But but when talking about like modern juries, I was talking about this with my dad a while ago, and my dad many years ago, well, not many, I mean like 8. He was on a jury. He was on jury for like a police brutality case. It wasn't criminal. I think it was more civil. So
doesn't sound very civil to me.
At the end of his case, it was unclear whether or not it was, police brutality or not. a majority of the jurors, meaning 8. I think there were 12 jurors, so 8 of them said they were guilty of it, 4 of them said they weren't, and it was a hung jury. So I would worry about that more than anything in a modern jury setting, which would be like, people are so divisive now that there would be no conclusion at the end. That would be the main worry that I would have when going into a situation like this, personally.
That's a really good insight. I think that regardless of sort of minorities and what you're talking about, I think that you would actually worry about whether or not people could ever come to an agreement with each other. I mean, if Facebook or Instagram is anything to measure society on, I don't think that you have a 12 Angry Men situation where you have 12 people. And yeah, the people in the movie are not necessarily open to being convinced, but they're not open to it. They're just people like, I have my opinions. And you present them with a question. You say like, well, what do you think about this? And they go, oh, okay, I guess I can entertain that. And I don't really see that kind of honest discourse. I'm not yearning for a time I was not born in, but I honestly don't think that the same kind of people are really around today. I think that people, I mean, this might be generalizing, but I think people generally make up their minds and they stick to those guns, regardless of what they're shown.
Dang, man, that's cynical. I hope that's not the case. I mean, I hate Facebook. I absolutely hate it because I think that it is a breeding ground of just like, you go on there and someone disagrees with you and you immediately feel assaulted because they're just asking like, hey, why do you think that? Or something like that. And it becomes this hate fest. But when you get people in a room, I think that there's a lot more, it's a lot more difficult to insult someone that's in front of you.
Is it though now? I mean, we're seeing like every day we're seeing videos about people that are just screaming the worst things you can imagine at each other in the streets.
But I think, I guess, well, okay, that's totally true. I mean, gosh, you see videos all over the place. But I think that part of the
thank you for not saying vetoes.
Yeah, you see these vetoes all over the place. No, but I think that what's beautiful, and I say, you know, it's the great equalizer is the decision chamber that they go into. These 12 people have to sit in front of each other and they have to talk to each other on this very individual basis. I think that the videos that you see of people yelling and screaming at each other, they've disassociated the humanity of the people in front of them completely from the person who's in front of them. They're just, they are the enemy in a very unperson way.
Yeah.
And that's why they're able to do what they're doing. And, you know, maybe rightly, maybe wrongly, situations are very different in very many different situations. But when you get a bunch of people in a room like that, and when you've got something like, hey, this guy's life hangs on the balance, I want to believe that people are still going to come together and say, like, finally, you know, they'll listen, they'll have the conversations. Or at least there'll be at least one person in the room who's going to say, hey, we need to ask, do we actually have enough here to say this guy did it? And because of that, he's going to get the electric chair. He's going to die.
Okay. A couple things about that. So when I brought up like my dad's jury or whatever, my dad was actually one of the guys who changed the position to join the 8. And I think there were a few on the jury that actually managed to do that, who realized that the cops were probably guilty and they switched the side. So I know that it is still possible for that to happen. Like I wouldn't say that's impossible. But I'd also like to point out in this particular movie, right, it's, I think juror number 7 and juror number 12 are the best examples we have in this movie of people who vote not because they care about the kid's life, not because they care about anything other than themselves at that moment, because juror number 7, he just wants to get out as soon as possible. As soon as he is able to join the majority, he joins it. And then juror number 12, he's kind of a stupid idiot who just sits there and then like flip-flops and does like, he says, yeah, whatever is the most flashiest argument that comes my way, I'll buy it, you know? So like even in 12 Angry Men, the scenario is not like whether or not all men can come together and decide like virtuously whether or not this the defendant is guilty or not guilty. It's because they sincerely believe it. It's any given group of any 12 people ever come together and ever decide this? And in this thought experiment, the answer is it can happen.
Yeah, I don't think you're giving number 12 enough credit. I think, I mean, he's definitely, but I mean, I think at the end, like he is actually trying to make a decision. He recognizes that something pretty big is on the line here, even though he's joking around the whole time and playing these games. That's his character. He thinks he's a jokester.
He's in an infantile way.
Yeah.
Like he's obviously the least intellectually mature of everyone around him.
Yeah.
In a way that's even funny. Like he even says, like, I have these little phrases and I say them, and let's run this up the pole and see who salutes it. And it doesn't get any laughs, but later on when he actually uses one, he's like, let's put this out on the stoop and see if the cat eats it. Everyone laughs, and he seems like kind of surprised that everyone's laughing at it. It's clear that he's kind of the baby of the group. He's being led along by the strongest kind of personality. And it's true only when the majority happens that he does back it.
Well, no, he flip-flops on his decision twice. He goes back to he goes to not guilty when he's presented with a bunch of evidence, and he says finally, all right, I'm going not guilty. And then he changes back because they talk about how there's this incontrovertible evidence from the woman across the way. But then they realize that she doesn't have, like, she wore glasses and she wouldn't have been wearing her glasses. And so they say, well, it's not, there's a shadow of a doubt here. And I mean, I think that he grows up kind of in that, because he sort of realizes through the people who actually care about what happens here, he realizes, like, hey, this is really important, actually. And he realizes that his vote matters and that his caring about this matters. And that's his character development, is going from being like this nobody who doesn't care about anything to being someone who does, rather than turning into the salesman who finally doesn't care about anything. He's a total nihilist. That's my take.
What do you think, Jesse?
I think that's very charitable take for that guy. So what I took away from juror number 12. When I think of juror number 12, he says he's the advertiser, right? So his job is to make things as interesting as possible for people to listen to or see. So what all the jurors saw in the courtroom was clearly very interesting and very engaging, and convinced them all of one thing, and that is that defendant is guilty. And so he doesn't come around till near the end, because he's going for the most interesting, flashy argument that comes. So he goes for the more interesting, he's not guilty, because frankly, at this point, that's now an entertaining movie, right? That is something so engaging that we would all watch it. So of course the advertiser would start to pay attention to it. That's how I took his initial not guilty. And then with him saying guilty again, is because he gets a very flashy, like, super emotion-packed argument from the angry father who gives that to him, and then he instantly switches again. Like, I don't think he cares.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think it's true that he doesn't care. I think one of the interesting things about juror number 8, Henry Fonda, is that he has the rare ability to stand up to everyone else, stand up against popular opinion. And I think there's a couple characters in the room who do that, like Lee Cobb. But generally, to a greater or lesser extent, people are sheep, right? So that's neither good or bad. It's just that a lot of people will follow the herd. So I don't think it's the case that either that he doesn't care. I think it's just the case that he's convinced. I think it's, no one's ever convinced on Facebook, in part because I think there's just much less force behind an argument that's written than one that's in person. And a powerful argument can convince people in person much more effectively.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. I guess looking at it, I think it's uncharitable and maybe I was about to say uncorrect.
That's incorrect.
It's uncorrect.
So you're so correct that you're in it. It's incorrect.
That's right. So from here on out, when we're really right, we're incorrect. I think it's incorrect to read any of these people as anything but sincere. They are sincerely who they believe themselves to be. Not that they can't be insincere themselves, but they don't have questions of identity, with the exception of juror number 3, Lee Cobb's character. That's the only person who seems to be truly in denial about himself. Everyone else seems actually like fairly comfortable with who they are. They're adults. They know when they're being mistreated. I mean, the foreman and juror number 2 specifically speak up for themselves all the time. Everyone speaks up for juror number 9, the old man. You know, it's a group of guys, and just like Henry Fonda says when they're in the bathroom, you know, oh, it's a group of guys, just like any group. You know, it's a very familiar group to him. They're very self-possessed people that are they're workers. You know, they're middle-aged men making their way in the 1950s, and Lee Cobb is the only one that is under any sort of, I think, delusion. Everyone else can admit when they're wrong. Even the racist juror, the worst thing about him is that he's racist. The best thing about him is that he listened to people. Because remember when he goes on his awful tirade and everyone in the room turns away from him, it's amazing. People are just getting up from the table to get away from him. He's so repellent.
They go to the edge of the room. They like plaster themselves against the walls.
The only one that's left is juror number 4, the super logical one, right?
Yeah.
And the salesman. He's turned away, but he's still at the table.
He's turned away. He's disgusted. He's embarrassed. And the rational juror,
he just doesn't care.
The rational juror, though, is looking right at the racist, looking right at him, and says, "You are entitled to your opinion. Do not open your mouth again.
Go and sit down." And he does for the rest.
He never does. He never says another word.
Except for not guilty.
Yeah, not guilty. That's it. That's
it.
He
sits
on the
by
table,
himself. Like the corner table. Why is it there?
His chair is it's turned away from the other.
He's got the dunce cap. Yeah, it's crazy. Like it's
I like that a lot, and I think that prepossession is really good. And so talking about maybe the closest audience surrogate might be juror number 12. If you're in this room with this group of guys, maybe most people would be that guy. Would you think? Is that our sort of into the world?
I don't know. I was thinking about that. Who did I relate to most? I don't know. Do you guys have thoughts on that? Letney, who do you feel like you are in 12 Angry Men?
You can't say juror number 8.
And that's the thing.
You can't say jury number 10.
I guess it depends exactly what you mean by that question. Because obviously, you put yourself in the place of protagonist, right? But that doesn't mean that that's the person you identify with. So I guess 12 makes a lot of sense in terms of, I think you are throughout the, at least I was throughout the movie, going back and forth between whether I thought he was guilty. But I guess one of the other characters I really liked, I don't know if I identified with him, but I really liked, was the immigrant.
He's
just so many amazing, powerful speeches. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What were you thinking, Jesse?
Yeah. I think juror number 12, especially just thinking about like your average person on the street, I think he represents the worry I have for most jurors out there, which is like you are just going to be bored. You are just going to be bored with everything, and whatever the flashiest thing coming your way is the thing you're going to latch on to. So yeah, I did relate to him that way because like I know I have that within me too. Like I know one of the only reasons why I'm watching 12 Angry Men is because it is a fantastically made movie. It has a fantastic pace and it moves so well. But I also love Reddit. And if juror number 12 today,
if juror number 12 campaigns on Reddit,
he would. Juror number 12 is like the quintessential Reddit user, right?
Totally. Like
he's just the guy who keeps swiping and keeps upvoting things and then just keeps going. And so yeah, I do relate a lot to juror number 12, but in terms of like who I would see myself the most as, Like I hope it wouldn't be juror number 7, but it might be juror number 7.
Wow.
Good,
Like,
brave take.
Okay, that's like the guy I'm most worried about.
No,
Yes.
I honestly, like, thinking about it in terms
Yeah.
of real life, I am pulled out of my life. I have to tell my work. I have jury summons. I'm going to take a significant pay cut.
It's like you've got a solid week or more
Yeah.
on a murder trial.
Yeah, or even worse. Think about it's like assault
You're on a
and battery.
grand jury, dude, and it's like a month-long thing.
I mean, you'd be lucky if it was an interesting murder. You know,
Yeah.
at least then you'd have something to occupy your mind. Maybe it's a really boring case. Maybe it's a civil trial. I mean, who knows? I don't know how these things work because I've never had one.
Yeah.
But you're getting paid like, what is it, like $8 an hour to do this? You're losing money. It's a civil service, yes, and every citizen should do his civil duty. But it sucks to your bottom line. Yeah. You don't want to be there. You want this to be over as quickly as possible.
So you can go sell marmalade.
Yes, you can go sell. I mean, he made he made a lot of
23
money.
grand.
1957? Holy cow.
Selling marmalade. It's like, I don't know how I did it. I just did it. I love
it's
that
pretty
line.
amazing. So
I love that line.
I think that's a good insight. Honestly, I'm probably with either the working class juror, just because that's sort of my job. I would hope that I would put my civil duty first, but honestly, I might be baseball card juror because I might just be like, yeah, whatever moves us along. I don't
whatever
care.
Gets me to the game.
I would like to go back to work so that my paycheck is normal, so I can pay my rent on time. That would be good. Thank you. And it sounds.
I just want to add that, given that Henry Fonda's character is an architect, I might have a slightly better.
Yeah, because you are the architect.
Yeah. Tony is the classical architect.
Tony the architect. That's what we call him.
Don't at him, bro. Don't do it. What other things can we talk about with this? It is really thematically deep. I want to ask another question. One last question from me. Do you think that the integration and use of the voice of women, not even the voice of minorities here, because we talked about that, but specifically the voice of women, how do you think that this changes this movie? Do you have any thoughts, Letney?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Just because I was when we were compiling our lists for who we would cast, I was looking for female actors, and I had trouble because I think there's so much male energy in the movie. There's so much confrontation. I had trouble replacing that, and I wonder what that would do to the tone of the movie. To flip things.
I mean,
bit.
It is hard. And I wanted to bring it up because it's like that room smells like groins. Like it comes off the screen that way.
Oh, dude, that room is so disgusting. They had so much sweat all over
There's so
their
much
bodies.
chest sweat.
I love how we're like almost done with the movie, and they finally figure out like, hey, the way to get the fan on is by flipping the switch, like turning on the lights, and you could have air. Like, wake up, people.
Well, I love that scene too because it's so symbolic of the entire case, right? Like, all you guys had to do was do this one simple thing that you just never thought of, but everybody just said, oh, the fan is broken. Everybody went along with it. So yeah, that scene is great for that reason too. But in terms of like what it would be like to have an actress in there, like I had trouble envisioning a young, super attractive actress in there because I would think what would start happening is a lot of guys would start fighting for like no reason whatsoever.
That's fair. I think it's fair.
So,
but what I was more asking about is maybe like not imagining like a young up and comer to disrupt the age balance, because all these guys are definitely over 35. But just a middle-aged woman, just like these are middle-aged men. How does that mature energy, and I don't mean mature in a disparaging way, but I really mean like you are a grown up. Just like if it's just someone from your office, someone from your workplace, and it just so happens that they are now here with you in the jury room. Like how does the female dynamic change it? And not necessarily like we got a young hottie here, because guess what? That movie's been made too. But just another person that happens to be a woman.
I don't think you have the same kind of aggressive sort of male.
Do you think it becomes less
battle.
aggressive or even more aggressive?
It becomes differently aggressive, maybe. I mean, you're going to have the interplay of it's going to bring up a whole new host of things. It's not just going to be like father-son dynamics and that sort of thing, but you're also going to have like, hey, that you've got a guy there with a bad marriage or she had a bad relationship with her son. Like it changes the dynamics a lot. It brings in a whole slew of new stories, because all these stories, all these people, what kind of comes out throughout the story is their relationships to one another, or their relationships to the people in their lives. Especially, Lee J. Cobb, he has the son, and that's like the crux point of the whole movie is like his anger and rage at his child, and his child leaving him and after beating him up. So that's this huge story that comes out. But then what you're going to have if you bring in a woman is you're going to have those dynamics as well. You're going to have mother-son dynamics. You're going to have husband-wife dynamics. You're going to have father-daughter, mother-son, everything.
Yeah, I mean, actually, now looking at the list of 12 jurors, I honestly think any one of them can be a woman, and not much would change. I could see anybody being the foreman, right? Like trying to lead things and then struggling and kind of failing. Like any woman can do that. Any woman can be like the piglet kid, like earnestly trying to figure out how to be a good juror. And
honestly, like the most spineless Hollywood remake would definitely recast juror number 2 as a woman, because it's the easiest one to do. Like no dynamics change, right?
It's very easy, right? I think, yeah, and honestly, you could get somebody with a lot of acting chops to do that juror number 3. Again, Meryl Streep is juror number 4. You could get a woman to play juror number 5 and then change like the poor minority dynamic.
Michelle Rodriguez.
Yeah, that could be it. I think that whole rant that juror number 3 goes against with juror number 5 could still happen. That'd be great. Juror number 6 could be like a single mom just trying to make it. Juror number 7 just like, get me out of here, I want to go home. Juror number 8, anybody. I think a woman could actually be anybody, and it would still basically be the same story, personally.
I mean, it would definitely change some things. Like, I'm thinking about juror number 6, Edward Binns. So one of the things that defined that character for me was that he was aggressively defending the old man. So he kept threatening to beat up Lee Hobb if he kept talking to the old man that way. And that doesn't seem like that would be the case with a female replacement.
Unless both she and the old juror are women, right?
True.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be that way either. Like, I could imagine they get I don't know, who's the woman in Baby Driver that plays John Hamm's girlfriend? She'd be perfect. I'll find her name. In a minute. But sorry, continue with your point.
Oh, I was just going to say that I guess for me, it seemed like there was 2 dynamics that I saw where it seems like there's quote unquote female energy, or you could replace the character with a female without drastically changing the dynamics. One was all the relationships around juror number 9, Joseph Sweeney, where one of the more boisterous characters would attack him, like Cobb, and then a bunch of people would jump to his aid. And it seems like you would have that dynamic if there was, say, an elderly woman being attacked. Just that idea of like a disadvantaged class being attacked, and then people jumping to their aid because they see that obvious injustice.
Yeah.
Then I guess the other. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. And then I guess we've already alluded to this, but it seems like you could definitely take like a Meryl Streep character to replace juror number 4, where you have that idea of like a hero that's coldly rebuking someone for racism or something like that.
And also, you could get a lot of people to play juror number 10 and just say she's a type of Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's possible.
That's true. Yeah,
That's possible. I could imagine any number of actresses that might almost like want to do that because it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine if
Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon wanted to do something
Oh
like
my
that?
gosh, that'd be
That would be so
I'd be
cool.
down. I'd want to see that movie.
Rocket. Anyway, the actress I was thinking of is her name is Isa Gonzalez. I just wanted to say that before we moved on.
Okay.
Well, I'm about out of questions for this, so I do have to say, we are really only scratching the surface of this. It's a podcast where we try to have fun, but it's also we try and dig deep into the issues. But sometimes movies like this, the issues are limitless. They talk about our society now, and honestly, if we wanted to do a podcast about our society now, we wouldn't do it about movies.
Yeah.
And we also wouldn't be who we are.
Can I also say, though, that as a movie, like just watching the camera work for this particular movie was amazing. Like, I can't believe that this entire movie, besides like, I think 5 minutes, because there's a couple minutes in the bathroom and then 3 minutes split between the beginning and end, that doesn't take place inside one room.
Yep.
That's it. It's just one room with the actors actively moving around, camera following them, the way it changes from like close up on the face, zoom out, the actor walks around, other actors come into the conversation, they leave, the one actor, and then it's a camera over the guy's shoulder, and all one scene.
Well,
And the God's eye view on top.
Well, and it also kind of moves because it starts off very much God's eye view, and you get that God's eye view throughout a little bit, but it starts off very much that way. Then it moves down while they're discussing and they're becoming more intimate with one another, and you're getting to know them, and you're fitting into every single person's shoes.
Yeah,
where you're kind of on an equal level to them. And then at the end, you're below them, especially below Henry Fonda. Yeah. It's like you're looking up to him.
He's
very
a hero.
Much. Yeah,
Ooh,
and when they go out and you get Davis and what's the old man's name? McCardle. You're looking up at them. And I think that was really interesting. Like, this clearly is representative of how we've sort of gone on this journey with them.
And we see Lee Cobb right at the end when he rips apart his son's picture and he collapses just in this like pile of limbs and sweat and broken dreams.
Yeah.
And is crying and just says not guilty, like almost immediately when he says some of the worst things about the kid. And he's, you do your best for him, they rip your heart out, and then he tears the picture apart, and then almost instantly says not guilty. Like there's almost instant regret. Like he rips it, and then it goes, "Oh, that was a mistake. I made a mistake this whole time. Not guilty."
Yeah. That's almost him being like it's him realizing what he's the guilty one.
Yeah,
he's the one who's at fault for his son's actions.
Yeah,
and it's like he's not just saying that the kid's not guilty and his son's not guilty. He's saying I'm the guilty one. But then how amazing is it? They all leave. The only two left are Henry Fonda and
McCardle.
and Luke Cobb.
Lee Cobb. Yeah, and he picks up the jacket.
He picks up his jacket and he puts it on him.
And does not look. He does not look at him though. He keeps his eyes down. He gives the man his dignity.
He gives him so much dignity. Like, what? That just came out of nowhere. I had forgotten that scene. And that he gives him his jacket. This is really, really powerful. It's almost like, it's almost like in Brothers K, where when in Brothers Karamazov, when the old monk bows to old Karamazov, the dad, and he's like, I bow to your suffering. And it's like, man, this is a really, I don't know. It was amazing. It was so
really beautiful scene.
So cool.
Really well said.
Yeah. Just to share its praises. It's an amazingly made, every scene is so intentional. Every close up of the face, every downward angle. It's a masterpiece of filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think that's safe to say at this point, because this has, and not only a masterpiece of filmmaking, but masterpiece of writing, because the fact that I know people like all 12 of these jurors in my life right now, when they apparently existed like 60 plus years ago, is an amazing accomplishment. That's that's not just a classic you've written a timeless classic, a classic where anybody of any age can take a look at this and say, I know these people exist, and I can be in a room with them and come to this resolve.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts about this? Anything else you want to say about this, Tony?
I mean, I'm just echoing everything you guys said. One thing that was really cool too is the absence of a score in the movie. That the director was able to, and the filmmaker was able to capture that the emotion without the crutch of a score. And the only music was right at the end. That kind of triumphal music.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool note. Yeah. The drama speaks for itself. The music was the words.
Yeah.
I mean, hats off to you, Reginald Rose.
It's incredible.
Wow.
I just want to say, okay, how cool is this scene with the switchblade when Luke Cobb, Lee Cobb, I'm sorry, I keep going back and forth. When he's demonstrating how someone would stab another man who's taller than them in the chest. I mean, oh my gosh, there's so much symbolism. Like, he's going to stab the taller man because he doesn't like him, because he's been beating him up intellectually and morally and in all sorts of ways. And he almost goes for it.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
But then you feel like an idiot for thinking that he would. And he treats everyone like,
yeah,
what,
like
you're
such an idiot. Okay, 11-year-old Mike seeing this movie, like, I thought when Henry Fonda pulls out the switchblade, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's the actual murderer. I kept waiting. I kept waiting for the moment. I was like, oh no, Cobb's the murderer. He's the guy who actually killed someone. And then, like, ingrained in my mind is the moment when the Italian guy who grew up in the slums comes up and he doesn't want to talk about his past, because he's with all these guys who are clearly, there's this
quite well-to-do.
Well, there's well-to-do guys, there's people who aren't, but they're definitely, judging each other based upon their where they come from, their wealth, all of this stuff. And he doesn't want to reveal, he's from the slums, and it's coming out and stuff. And he finally comes up and he says, listen, I know how these guys fight. I know what it's like. He's basically, saying, I'm this kid. And he shows them how kids fight with switchblades. Mm-hmm. Switch knives is what they're calling it then. And that was just, it was so cool. And it's something that I think about regularly. It's like, I think about, it's a switchblade. The way you do that is...
You think about the upward stab.
Yeah, it's an upward stab. Like, man, it's kind of like sinking sand. It's something that I think I'm going to need later on in my life. I don't even think I ever will, but it's always going to be there, just kind of bouncing around in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are great points, but I do have one big question to ask you guys before we end this, and that is, do you think the kid killed his father?
Is he guilty? Is he not guilty? I preface this podcast by saying he is not guilty, and I'm going to say it again. There is a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, not guilty.
Yeah,
not guilty.
Yeah, but I guess that's one of the coolest things about the movie to me is that it seems like from when the movie begins and they decide to go around the room and each person gives an accounting of why they're voting the way they're voting. One of the early jurors says that I just think he's guilty. I think it's juror number 2. I just think he's guilty. And it just seems like that's kind of the way we generally think. We generally think, especially in this kind of thing, where it's either guilty or not guilty, we kind of think in a binary way, where it's almost like, 51% one way, that's the way I'm going. And it seems like part of what Henry Fonda is convincing the jury of throughout the jury is not which one you think is more likely. It's tilted to one side where you have to provide, the burden of proof is on the prosecution.
Yeah.
So I think, given that framework, I mean, it seems like the verdict of not guilty is totally justifiable.
I mean, when I was watching this as a kid, I actually thought maybe the defendant didn't do it, period. And then I realized now, watching it as an adult, that's not what Henry Fonda is trying to prove. He's not trying to prove that the kid didn't do it. Because if you actually look at all the information that's laid out to you, the odds are in favor of this kid killing his father, I think. Yeah, I would say there's a good 60% chance that happened. There's a good 40% chance that did not happen, which is what I would deem a reasonable doubt, which is all they prove in the movie So I would also vote not guilty based off of what I saw in the movie, but that doesn't mean you have to say that the kid didn't end up actually doing it. The thing is, you just never know.
There's reasonable doubt.
I guess
There's reasonable doubt.
I guess the other thing I was wondering though is, and maybe it's not that important to get into realism, but it seems like what they're doing in this movie is not what a jury is supposed to do. Because my understanding is that what a jury is supposed to do is take the evidence that's presented in court and then using that evidence come to a decision on what's the truth. And it seems like what actually happens is they relitigate the case in the jury room, where Henry Fonda brings in new evidence, and they start cross-examining the witnesses. Essentially, they talk about the divots in the nose, and so I just wonder if maybe it's not that important, but I wonder if this is really how a jury is supposed to go.
Going back to my dad's jury trial, so part of it was I can't give all the details legally speaking. I think.
Please don't.
Like, part of it was that that the man that was shot swung something at the cops. It was an everyday object that my dad was on his break while he was deliberating, was able to go feel out and say, and he felt it in his hands and swung it physically and said, "There's no way this justifies a shooting." And actually went back and voted the other way. So, yeah, I see what you say, that would be unreasonable, but
he didn't bring it. He didn't bring it into the courtroom, and it wasn't also an illegal object, right?
Which they then left there. I was always
they left it. It's illegal that they have it, so he left it for the state to take. He's not interested in keeping it.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be able to bring a switchblade into a courtroom now.
I mean, yeah. So of course, 12 Angry Men is a little stylized in that way, where of course this wouldn't really happen to some degree. Maybe in this day and age, but it still has to happen. You still have to mull things over in your mind, look at all the evidence, and figure out what's reasonable in order to come to the conclusion.
Well, gents, I think we've reached that time in our podcast where we ask our famous questions. Number one, gentlemen, is this a dad movie? Mike?
Absolutely. 100%.
Jesse?
1,010%.
Tony?
1,011%.
Then we are agreed. This movie is guilty of being an all-timer dad movie. I am so happy we can put it on the wall. There it is. It's beautiful. It's weird that it's sitting next to Spider-Man, but it's there.
Spider-Man 1 and 2, to be clear.
And 3.
No.
Yeah. But this movie, this movie conquers all of my dad categories. I will watch it with other dads with beer. I will watch it by myself. I will watch it with my kids. And furthermore, I have to show my kids this movie. No matter what happens in life, they have to see it.
That's right. And that leads us into our second question. Jesse's already answered it. But Mike, are you going to show your kids this movie?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Tony?
Definitely.
Well, as of yet, I don't have kids, but definitely.
but you will. But someday.
But you will when you do.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, look, as Jesse said before we started recording, we're loaning you all the dad energy that you want, all right, to roll on through this thing. I also am going to show my kids this. I'm so excited to. In fact, I turned it on the other day. My wife did not know that we were doing this. She thought we were doing a different episode. I have to say that we are recording this out of order, in case I didn't say before. But I was just watching it on a Friday afternoon, and she walked by a couple times and said, "Oh, you're watching that?" I said, "Yeah." And time went on, and now it's a Saturday evening. And she said, "Oh, you're recording tonight." I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "What are you recording on?" I said, "Well, 12 Angry Men." She goes, "Oh, you watched that for the podcast?" I said, "Yeah. Why else would I watch a 12 Angry Men on a Friday afternoon?" She goes, "Because you've done it before, and that's not weird behavior for you." So this is just a movie that I just watched. It's kind of on a short list of movies that I'll just turn on. My daughter's already sat with me through it twice. Once when she could not remember it, and now recently where she ran in and out of the room coloring and stuff. But I can't wait to actually sit her down and have a deep conversation, kind of like what we've had about this movie and what it means. And I think that in terms of age, I think this is a movie that I would be comfortable letting her see kind of at any time. The concepts are heavy and deep, but it's enough that maybe the more she's exposed to the movie, I think that maybe the more they'll sort of become ingrained in her, and the more that she'll sort of have this interior dialogue about justice and about America and about our judicial system.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's a movie that I want to spring on them, because if you do, I think you got to wait until they're much, much older. And it's just such an easy movie to watch. I'd be comfortable with her seeing it. I mean, she's 3 and she watched part of it with me. I'll probably watch it every couple of years or so with her from now on until, I don't know, until I die.
Yeah. I mean, I watched this movie when I was like 7 or 8, and I loved it and got really into it. So I would be the same. I would want my kids to watch around the same age, I think.
Cool.
Same here. 7, 8,
I think
9,
that gives
10.
it enough time.
Yeah. What do you think, Tony? Just projecting into the future.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because I'd listened to one of your earlier podcasts and this question had come up. On the one hand, it seems like it's a very mature movie. And I worry sometimes about exposing kids to great art before they're ready for it, and then having that poison their perception of it. So, if you read, whatever, Grapes of Wrath too early and you just find it boring, then maybe you don't come back to it later. So I wonder if this is the kind of movie you want to wait till, the kids are kind of at the age of reason where they can kind of follow the arguments, and maybe I would say, like an early teenager, where you could sit them down and explain the concepts. And but I'm not sold on that 100%. I mean, there's art that I've ingested before I was ready for it, and went back to it many times. So I don't think it's a hard and fast rule.
Well, okay. I'm just going to say, I think the beauty of this movie is found in the way it presents the arguments. Like, watching this when I was like 8, it was so simple to digest. Like, I actually understood what was at stake. And like I think I just mentioned, right, I actually thought they were trying to prove something a little different than they actually were. I thought they were actually trying to prove he's innocent rather than just poking holes in arguments that already exist. So that misconception happened in my mind, but I wasn't unable to follow the arguments. Like, they lay things out so clearly when they say things like, it's impossible that the knife was the same. And he pulls out the knife, slams it on the table and says, I bought this 2 blocks down from the apartment that the kid lives at. Even at 8, that is so obvious. I could follow it regardless of what age, from like 8 on, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I think these are all really great points of view, and I love that we do, as usual, we sort of run the gamut. We are the spectrum. I think that's really fun, and I think it's just really how you come to this thing. Well, what's up, Mike?
I want to add one more question to our list of dad questions, and I know we are over 2 hours now on this podcast,
for sure.
But I think it's really important because this is a dad podcast, and I think for myself, one of the things that I think about is, okay, if I want my kids to see this movie, what's the major point? What's the major sort of lesson that I want them to get out of it? Is it like, hey, this is a great work of art? Is it there's this moral lesson that this describes perfectly, or some combination? I don't know. So I want to ask if you could put it into just a quick sentence or two. What is it that you want your daughter, your kids, Jesse, to get out of this movie? What would you hope for them to get when they finish this?
What I want my kids to get from this movie is that just because everybody says something is true, that doesn't necessarily make it true. You need to find the truth kind of on your own and in tangent with everything that they're saying, and basically put it to the scientific method, I guess, to try to discover the truth. And also, damn it, I can't remember what I was saying. I had it so good before. Oh,
Well,
okay.
Tony, what do you think about this? Like, why would you show this to your kids?
So I think there's a couple things. I think one, like Jesse alluded to, the idea of standing up for what's right in the face of total opposition is definitely powerful. But I think one of the other big themes in the movie is the value of human life. Throughout the movie, people keep telling Henry Fonda, "You're wasting our time. You're wasting our day. Why can't we get out of here? It's so hot." And he just keeps talking about how we can spend an hour. This is someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
This is us 2 hours in.
Yeah, we are dragging.
I think okay. I think we're getting we've got two major points here. Vito, I think you can come up with a third. Let's go. Let's do it.
I would show this to my daughter because of the respect that I have for the original source material.
Okay.
This is something that was, like I said before, it was just so fundamental to my understanding of drama and my understanding of how to write and how to evaluate and how to criticize and how to analyze a piece of work, a piece of fiction, either visual or literary. And I would want her to approach it from that more technical standpoint. But it also says a lot about America, about how our justice system is flawed and how it's good. It provides almost the checks and balances itself. So I'd want to show it to her for that reason. And additionally, I'd want to show it to her because of the deep well of empathy that's at the heart of this movie. This very essentially humanistic, beautiful ability of all the characters to try and understand the other characters, even when they're really angry. And yeah, harsh words are thrown, but at the end of the day, there is this olive branch that passes out between characters, even between characters that have just been insulting each other. It's a very good movie about teamwork, and as stupid and corporate as that sounds, about friendship. And it's really about that. It's about living in a society, being a citizen. So for those reasons, I would show it to her.
That's awesome.
Oh, you bleeding heart.
I think that those are all the same reasons I want to show it to my kids. And the only thing I'd add is that I think that the statement it makes about how we're all coming to everything that we encounter with a prejudice, and we need to take a step back from it and recognize that. I think that's really important. We need to have that little Henry Fonda in our brain that says, "Hey, why are you really thinking this? Like, give it a minute. Think about what you're doing, and then move forward." I think that's probably the only thing I'd add to all that. I wish we'd ended with Vito, because yours was definitely the most heartfelt really great to it all.
No, I love the little Henry Fonda in everybody. I think that's
great. Oh man! Well, guys, this has been our longest episode yet. And,
it's been so much fun. And
yeah, one of definitely our most fun. And I wanted to make it long, especially because we had a lot of fun, just talking about the movie as just a movie. And what we wanted to see from it going forward. And I also wanted to talk about it as it. This is just an all-time classic. If we can't take our time with these, what are we going to take our time with? I mean, Lord forbid we ever do The Godfather, because we're going to be here for the running time of The Godfather.
Well, this podcast is already a good movie and a half of 12 Angry Men.
It is.
So,
it's true. It's true. We're so much longer than the running time.
When we do The Godfather, it's going to be like a quick 15 minutes.
Oh,
this movie was made. Goodbye. You should all see it.
That would be great. I mean, what else could we possibly say?
We'll read the credits off. Yeah.
So
that's a great dad podcast.
Stay tuned to our shortest episode ever later. But join us next time that we record in this mini-series. Our next movie will be To Kill a Mockingbird in our grandfather's trilogy of courtroom dramas. So To Kill a Mockingbird, look for it. But from all of us here at Not Your Father's Movies, I'm Vito.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jesse.
I'm Lenny.
All right, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Hey, everyone. This is Mike from Not Your Father's Movies. Thank you so much for listening. If you've got any questions on tonight's episode, thoughts on movies that should or should not be in the Dad Canon, and Most importantly, things Vito got wrong. We'd literally love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with anything you got at notyourfathersmovies@gmail.com. That's notyourfathersmovies@gmail.com. And if that's not enough for you and you want more ways to listen to us, reach us, share us, and support us, check out our website at nyfm.podbean.com. That's nyfm.podbean.com. Shout out to Max Agros for our sick theme music. Thank you, Max, and thank you all again for listening to us. Have a great night.